Good morning, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of the Coaching Summit. Again, it's such good attendance. We've been blown away by how many people have been attending. It's been fantastic, and to see so many people who've come back from yesterday as well. So great to see you all. Just to let you know that all of our sessions should allow you to enable captions if you wish. So please go ahead and do that. So next up we have our speaker, who is Nick French, and Nick is with us today, and his session is building network confidence through coaching. So good morning, Nick. Thanks so much for being here, and I will hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're having a great start to today. Some brilliant sessions so far for those of you who already caught them, but hopefully you'll get plenty from my session as well. So I'll start by sharing my screen, and then we'll get into an introduction and then into the main session. So I've practiced on Zoom solo many times already this morning, so I'm hoping that you can see my screen. I'm seeing smiling faces and thumbs up, so that's a great start. So welcome to my session. My name is Nick French. By way of introduction, and here we go. Hold on, let me just. Okay. First technical hitch of the session. So let me. There we go. Okay, it's clicking on. There we go. Great. So, by way of introduction, so I'm currently in sunny-ish Worcester, which is where I'm based, and married, 5 children, 3 grandchildren. So that keeps me incredibly busy. And in terms of my content today and what I wanted to talk about, you'll see my my very squiggly roadmap on the left-hand side. I have had what many would term a squiggly career, and you can see some of the businesses I've worked for. I started off in the Golden Arches and made my way through retail and builders merchants to my own business, which is Central Coaching. And my journey to coaching was inspired by a couple of experiences. My first experience of coaching was just a one-off session with someone who I happen to have built a really strong friendship with, and they helped me with some career coaching and also coached me to prepare for my first marathon back in 2018, which was a fantastic experience. And then the more profound experience I had was during the pandemic, and you know, that affected us all in different ways. But the pandemic really derailed the way that I worked and took away some of the joy of what I did. And I was fortunate enough to be coached during that time through my employer, and the lady that coached me. We worked together for 6 months, and it was that really made me realise that this was going to be what I wanted to do at some point in my career. So that's that was my journey into coaching, and I really genuinely love my new career. It's something that gets me energized and out of bed in the morning, and the people I work with are what bring me the most joy. Which then brings me on to why networking. I would say networking probably was a bit of a savior for me some weeks ago. Some months ago, in that when I flipped to become a coach and started my own practice, I naively thought that things would move at pace, and they didn't, and I had to pivot and do something different. And networking was the thing that I turned to, and it has really given me an insight in how to develop clients and how to work with different people. And that's what I wanted to come and share with you today, and to discuss with you how networking and growing confidence in networking can really help you. So before we proceed, there's a bit of interactivity with the session today. I'm going to use the chat quite a few times. I'm also shortly going to use Mentimeter, and I'll explain how that works for those of you who may not have seen it before. But I'm really interested to know what's brought you to my session today, specifically around the content that I'm going to share with you. So if you would like to drop some comments into the chat on that one. I'd be really interested to see what's brought you here. Okay, networking curious, thank you. Coming through now. Yeah, I know networking is powerful, but I don't always find it easy. I joined a networking group, but I don't think I'm using it to its potential. Yeah, some great things coming through here. What's really interesting as I read the comments is these are things that I've heard through different forums. A lot of coaches that I talk to have challenges around networking.
That way. Yeah,
yeah, a lot of coaches that I talk to have challenges around networking, and as my network has grown, I've seen that with people from other professions as well, and it can be quite an intimidating place. So our agenda for today, the main topics I'm going to discuss are our networking emotions, which we'll come on to shortly. A bit of around the psychology of connection and how as human beings we do that. And then we'll take a moment or two to pause for thought and think about our intentions during networking. I'll then come on to our superpowers, and then I'll give you a very brief introduction to the 5-lens Enneagram, which some of you may have come across. It's a profiling system that is very prevalent overseas. It's very prominent in South Africa. It was created there, and I was exposed to it about 9 months ago, and I think it gives a really holistic view, and there are certain elements that really show up well when I consider the content that I'm sharing with you today. But if we can go back to the chat very, very quickly, and I just wouldn't mind on a 1 to 10 scale, a quick response from people around how do you feel about networking on a scale of 1 to 10. So 1 being terrified and 10 being supremely confident. I'm really eager to see how people feel about it. 6 4s, 8s, 9s, 4s, 5s, a 2. Okay, a real cross section. Okay, a real cross section. That's great. Hopefully, if you're an 8 or a 9, you might get a nugget or 2. If you're a 4 or a 5, there may be a few more nuggets for you, but let's see how we go. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. So I'll move on to my next slide. And this, if you can bear with me in a moment, will require a little bit of juggling from a technical point of view, because I'm going to switch between sharing different screens. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Mentimeter, it's an opportunity to have an online poll. I'm going to create a word cloud with you today. So you can use the QR code to log straight into the question I'm going to ask you, or failing that, you can use the code that's on the screen. So I'll give you a moment or two to do that. The lady in the bottom right-hand corner probably represents how I felt about networking all those months ago. And the word that springs to mind when I look at that lady looking quite anxious is fraught. So I think we'll flip over. So at this point, I'm just going to swap screens, and hopefully we'll see a beautiful word cloud. Okay, it's coming along nicely, so bear with me while I just bring that screen back up. Okay, so hopefully you can see your word cloud developing in front of you. If you've not used Mentimeter before, then the bigger words are the ones that are most frequently used. So nervous, sat proudly in the middle, anxious, uncertainty, connection. That's a great one to see in this context. Superb opportunity as well. And they're still coming in. Great. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So there's some really good stuff. I just caught the word selling in there. That's really interesting. Yeah, we'll come back to that one later on. Super. Thank you very much. I'm going to flick back now because it seems to have slowed down. Okay. There we go. I guess that was about as seamless as we could get. So there's some great words there, and hopefully they'll be brought to life as we continue through the session. Just to move on for a moment, the concept of our left and right brains may not be a new one to you. And what I particularly like about this graphic is it brings to life just how different they are. And in network settings, depending on your leniency towards left or right brain thinking, different behaviours will come up. As I look at the list on the left-hand side and the things that come to mind for me when in a networking setting, how connection takes place, how I relate to the people that I'm meeting. And a lot of these qualities really stem from being a coach, but also being a curious human being. And really putting the person that you're meeting at the center of the conversation, at the center of your attention. I think the first 3 or 4 all fit into one category, and it's a phrase that I use quite a lot when I'm talking to clients about networking, which is when you're in a room that feels uncomfortable, one of the most important things is to remember that you can be the most interested person in the room. And that's with those high levels of curiosity towards the other person in the conversation. And it's a play on those words about being the most interesting person in the room. But I really like the sentiment behind that and how it can turn the tables on a concept that really we're probably familiar with. And it gives us that opportunity to really take on board and absorb what someone else is sharing with us. Taking time in a networking environment is absolutely crucial, and moving from person to person can be quite detrimental because you just don't get time to absorb. So really take time when you're with people to get to know what they're about. And I also think vulnerability plays a part when we're connecting through networking. Being comfortable in an uncomfortable space is a real challenge, but also a strength. And it's a concept I talk to clients about quite regularly. So being able to show that level of vulnerability and accept that you may not be completely comfortable in the setting, but your curiosity will lead you through. And it's all right not to have all the answers as well. Okay. I'm just going to click onto my next slide. So we're going to take a pause for thought for a moment. So there's 4 questions on the screen. I want to go to the chat for the first couple and then give you an opportunity to reflect on the second 2. And those can be things that you can consider and take away. But let's go to the chat for the first question. When you're in a networking setting and you meet someone for the first time, how would you describe yourself? And for me, that would be, when you're introducing yourself, what would you like them to remember? So, yeah, really keen to see what your thoughts are on this one. Nice smile. What a great start. That's fantastic. Sense of humour. Trustworthy. What a great word that is. Fantastic. Thank you. My energy, my passion and motivation. I would much rather deflect and focus on the other person. That's really interesting, Andrea. My curiosity, energy. Yeah, Lucy, that's great. I introduce myself as a coach and psychologist, but I want people to think I'm interested and trustworthy. It's really interesting as I read these that there's a lot of how people would see you, and you know, a lot of smile and caring, friendly, trustworthy, you know, words that we attach real meaning to. Cheryl, these first two questions bring you out in a cold sweat. Interesting. And then we'll go on to the second question, if that's okay. So again, in the chat, how do you articulate what you do? I think Lucy started the ball rolling on that a moment ago anyway. What kind of things ways do you describe what you do to a new connection? Bridget, I don't say I'm a coach. Oh, I love that, Laura. I help people too. Yeah, I tend to describe the work I perform, but try to splice in humour about challenges to look for common ground. Just moved Daniel, talking about the BBC Editorial Apprentice Programme, and you're a coach. Quite interesting that a number of the comments are pivoting back towards questions. So asking questions in order to establish that point of contact and that rapport, and not necessarily being too open about what you do as an individual. And I think it's interesting that a couple of people have said that they wouldn't mention they were a coach. That's probably a whole different discussion. Okay, thank you. The next couple of questions, really, I just want to give you a moment to reflect on. And I think these are things that could be really good takeaways. We've touched on what do other people see when they see you. We've touched a little bit on that with some of the comments that have come through already. So what do people see when they see you? What if you were using a Johari's window, what would those people see that maybe you don't? And then the second question would be, what are your desired outcomes from networking? I'll give you a moment or two to think that through. While you're doing that, I'm just going to go back to the chat. Ali, that's a whole long list of things to bring to the discussion.
Hi, I'm here for the swimming class with Dan, please. I'm just a bit late.
Okay, right, I'm going to flick on to the next slide if that's okay. So in this slide, I want to talk for a moment about networking superpowers. And I use the word superpowers because it conjures up so many things for me. The list that's on the left-hand side, for me, are behaviours, and some of them we've already touched on a little bit in the chat and in other slides. But they're behaviours that as coaches we can demonstrate, but also leaders and business owners can bring to their discussions as well. And therefore, if you create conversations where these behaviours become apparent, then those conversations develop really, really strongly. When I think about the word service in the third point, this really, really resonates for me. And as coaches, we have service very much at the forefront of what we do. But I think it's absolutely key in networking as well. You know, I was only having a discussion with a connection yesterday about how networking is best served when both parties come at it from the perspective of service. And to the point that was raised on the word cloud about selling, if networking is all about selling, it can be quite an arduous task and it can be quite a minefield. So approaching it with a service mindset eases you and the people around you into the conversations that can develop further and potentially then become selling conversations or buying from conversations. And I think service and sense of purpose sit really closely together. I talk about leaning in. When you're stepping into a networking setting, leaning into the people that you already know and the people that you're already connected with and feel comfortable with is really, really important, because it gives you the confidence to step into a room or step into a conversation or a group where you can use that familiar face and that point of reference to build your confidence in that setting. And the last point is around having you have a skill that others want and need. When I was looking at the comments in the chat about how you introduce yourself and tell people what you do, always remember that you're a skilled professional and you've acquired experience and knowledge and the ability to interact with other people because you're a coach, and you're there because you're an expert in your field. The graphic on the right-hand side, know, like, trust is a marketing concept. I'm no marketeer, by the way, before you wonder. But this has really, really helped me in my experience to date. When I first started networking and first started my business, I fell into the trap of getting into selling conversations really quickly, and you very quickly switch people off. Once I'd understood the concept of know, like, trust, and it's a real staple of networking, as you go through that cycle and you have those points of connection, I think the rule of thumb I've been taught is it takes at least 7 points of connection before you're at the point where you've developed the trust. But once you get into that cycle and you're moving through those steps, things start to change. People start to respond to you differently. And then when you get into the trust space, all of a sudden people start asking questions about what you're doing and the curiosity levels build. And that's when people start to inquire. So you get into conversations that are more buy from as opposed to sell to. And I said I'd come back to selling. In terms of my discussion today, that's probably all I'm going to talk about in terms of selling. Creating conditions where you can have the right conversation and that person wants to buy from you. Okay, the 5-lens Enneagram is a personality profiling system. It's not particularly well known in this country. It was created by a gentleman called Colin Adam. It's very prevalent in South Africa, which is where I picked it up from a coach friend of mine. A brief introduction to it and brief explanation. You can see there's an outer wheel with instinctual, intellectual, and emotional around the outside. And then you can see that each one of those 3 sections has 3 windows, as we call them, with different emotions and different feelings and different attributes. So as you look at the Enneagram and you can see those 9 windows, what I'm really interested in, and we can go back to the chat for this one if that's okay, is to understand which one of those resonates with you most when you think about you in the networking space. Which one of those 9 windows would you most identify with? Insight, emotional, service, creativity. Insight coming up quite a bit. Yeah, insight's very popular. Delivery, Alessandra, that's really interesting. think delivery is a really interesting one because we've talked about service already, and service would feel like a straightforward window to step into. And interestingly, in the experience I've had so far and talking to someone who's a practitioner of this type of profiling, a lot of coaches have window number 2, service, as one of their dominant windows. Interestingly, window 3 of delivery can potentially be where we try to sell. And if the groundwork hasn't necessarily been done beforehand, by spending time in other areas, trying to sell without that can be quite challenging. Okay, thank you very much. That's really good. So I asked you a few minutes ago, in fact, I'm amazed how quickly time's gone. I asked you a few minutes ago to give me an indication of how you were feeling about networking. And I appreciate we've had a really short, sharp session today and just scratched the surface on a few concepts. But I'd be really interested to know at this point how you're feeling about networking, having taken on board some of the things that I've shared with you today, and has the needle moved for you at all? So again, the same scale, 1 to 10, 1 being still terrified and 10 being now supremely confident. How do you feel? Okay, it's great to see there's a few 7s and 8s. A few people saying they've moved, which I'm really pleased about. That's really good, thank you. Gone from a 3 to a 5, Maureen. That's really pleasing. Janet, need to reflect and see how it goes. Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't expect to have changed the world for you completely in the space of 25 minutes or so. Okay, so before I come on to the last slide or two, I'm really interested to know now, again, we can do this through the chat. What's your biggest takeaway from the discussion we've had today, please? Not that scary. That's really nice to see. Andrew, yeah, networking is connection. I think that's wonderful. Thank you, Lucy. No, like, trust. Don't just jump in with sales. Coming through thick and fast now. Networking is like coaching. That's brilliant. Thank you. It's really encouraging to see the comments. Oh, thank you. Feel like I know, like, and trust you now, Nick. 25 minutes, that's a bit of a record. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's wonderful to see the ability to make the connection between what we do on a day-to-day basis with our clients and the stuff that brings us the most joy can be taken and put into a setting that can be really, really uncomfortable. And we can use those skills and those practices to become better at that and to build more connections. More connections means more potential clients, which means more business. You know, there's no shame in taking that to a bottom line, but we can do it in a way that really suits our values as coaches. Thank you for your interaction. I'm really grateful for that. And thank you to Shelley for keeping the wheels turning so smoothly for me. So that brings me towards the end of my session. Thank you. I'm really keen to stay connected to as many people as possible. This is an entry point to my LinkedIn profile. I'm currently working on, well, I'm having someone working on my first website, which should be live very soon. And if you choose to come and connect with me on LinkedIn, I'll add you to my distribution list. My newsletter is going to be launched this month. And in that, I'll be sharing further tools and techniques, not just around networking, but I'll also be sharing some experiences and hopefully spreading some messages farther and wider. So please feel free to scan the QR code and connect with me, and I'll bring you into my distribution list. And that brings me to any questions. I did see a question in the chat earlier, and it was probably a long way up. I can't remember who that was. What does seneral mean, Lavender? Oh, how long you got? So the short answer is seneral is the elvish word, as in Lord of the Rings, for reflection. And you can take from that what you will, but I am a big nerd. I've got a hand up here. Santana.
Yeah, hey Nick, just quick
Hey.
question. What do you make of paid networking? You know, like the big companies that you have to pay a monthly, yearly subscription to.
They have a place, and I have a couple of those. I think if I boil it down to what drove me to choose the networks I chose, it was values. So I went and did the beauty parade and tried them all, and then went for the ones that felt right for me. I also do some free networking and some really low priced networking, and they can be equally as good. I think the bigger ones do provide some structure, and they provide the constant opportunity to interact. So in terms of building know, like, trust, because you see people so frequently, you can develop those relationships. And I've actually got clients from those networks.
Thank you.
No problem. Let's have a look. Alice, would you recommend practicing networking? I certainly would. I think in terms of practicing, there's no wrong or right answer. And I go back to my point about you being the expert. You're not only the expert in terms of what you do, you're the expert of you. And therefore, if you take your authentic self to a networking conversation, you can conduct it as if it was any other conversation. It doesn't need to be as scary as sometimes it may feel. If you were meeting a new acquaintance in a coffee shop, would it be any different? I hope that's answered your question, Alice. I think we've done all. Yeah, I asked for an example earlier in the chat, but I think it got missed. Not sure. Sorry, what was the example you were asking for? I don't know if you can put your hand up and.
It was given an example of an opening.
In terms of net. Right, okay. So I do start with I'm a coach. I'm very open about that. And there are a lot of coaches around at the moment, so it can be quite a difficult conversation to distinguish. And then I talk about the things that I do. So I help. I think I help is always a great start. And the kind of people I help. So I work in a lot with small businesses at the moment. So I talk about the types of businesses that I'm working with, and I talk about the things I'm passionate about. One of my main sectors is education, and I have a real passion for bridging the gap between education and business. So in those settings, I really lean heavily into the things that stand out for me and really resonate with me. So I'm hoping that helps answer the question. Ali's saying that you role play networking with your clients. I've done that a couple of times. It's really powerful. Thank you, Mel. The methods I'd use to get the other person talking: ask questions. Tell me what you do. Tell me why you do it. What's the best thing about doing what you do? Those kind of questions would really start to open people up. Thank you. Okay, I don't know if there are any more questions at all.
No, I think we're all good, but in the chat there's a lot of thanks for today, which is good.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed it. And thank you for your time and your attention.
Well, thank you so much, Nick, and I know that everybody here has had a lot of takeaways from this session today, so thank you. So there's a lot of appreciation in the chat there. Thank you again, everybody, for attending another session. For those of you who've been joining us since yesterday, we really appreciate it. Just another quick one from me with regards to In Good Company. It's just another reminder again about our Q&A sessions tomorrow, Friday the 5th of July, 9:30 a.m. Q&A with Zoe about training to be a coach, and at 12:30 Q&A with Joe about our CPD courses, emotions coaching practitioner training, and our foundations of group and team coaching. So that's it for this session now. Thank you so much again for attending, and thank you so much, Nick, as well, for your time today.
Thank
Lovely
you
to see
all.
you all. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.